As Julia never felt like she belonged in the normal world. When she left her family home to look for her perfect place, she never could have imagined where she would wind up. She never spoke to her old family ever again, but found a new family in a pack of wolves. They took her in as one of their own. And while her mother always hoped to see Julia again, she never thought it would be like this. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Ever since Julia left her family home to search for her perfect place, she has been alone. That is just how it's supposed to be, she thought, all alone, wandering the world. But when she spotted something from a diner, she knew where she had to go. Julia had a feeling she was being watched in the night. After a few weeks, a wolf presented itself in front of Julia. It wasn't an aggressive wolf, though. It wanted to belong to Julia. She never understood why, but joined the wolf pack anyway. After a tragic accident, the wolf searched for Julia. She found her after a few days lying inside a church. She jumped on top of Julia and rested her head on her belly. Julia's mother noticed something strange about the wolf, but nobody could have ever imagined what they would discover next. Why was the wolf so fond of Julia? And what was so special about the wolf? Julia was an ordinary woman, or that is what most people thought of her when they saw her. Nobody really knew what was going on in her life. She left her family home when she was 17 to be on her own, as she described it. It didn't come as a surprise, though. She never had a lot of friends. When Julia left, she had no plan. She wandered for a while, walking along the road. She counted the cars that passed her until she lost count. After what seemed like 3 hours, her tummy started rumbling. She saved a little money for herself, just enough to get her off her feet for the first few months. She searched for a restaurant, but it wasn't until an hour later that she found one. Julia sat down in the corner of the little diner. She looked outside the window and could see the edge of a large forest. She remembered the time she and her family went camping. Suddenly, she knew where she had to go. When she finished her food, it was starting to get dark outside. She walked to the edge of the forest. She started walking. First, she followed a small path, but she soon strayed from it. She lay down on a flat piece of moss. Suddenly, a strange feeling came over her. Was something watching her? Julia woke up to a strange sound. She looked around but saw only black. She saw mostly tree shapes but was startled when she saw something moving. For the next few weeks, Julia woke up every night to the same shape watching her. Sometimes it stood a little closer and sometimes a little further. She wasn't scared because she kept telling herself, if it wanted to hurt me, it would have already. Or so she thought. A few more weeks passed and she forgot about the shape in the dark, until one night when she woke up to loud breathing near her face. She looked up and saw 2 bright yellow eyes looking at her. The animal walked towards Julia at a slow pace and stopped when the light of the moon hit its face. Julia held her breath. A wolf, Julia thought, but it was a lot bigger than the wolves she saw at the zoo. The wolf didn't seem angry. Julia even almost felt safe. She leaned forwards to the wolf and held her hand out. The wolf sniffed her hand carefully. Then all of a sudden, the wolf ran away and Julia was alone again. The next night, she saw the wolf again. This time it brought something. It held a bunny in its mouth and dropped it near Julia's feet. She felt loved by the wolf, like it was trying to care for her. It had brought her food. Julia named the wolf Max. And from then on, Max visited Julia every night. Max started to bring his family, and they accepted Julia as if she was one of their own. She walked with them through the forest, slept next to them in the night. She even hunted with them. Julia felt truly at home with her new wolf family, but she never could have known what was going on when she didn't pay attention. Years passed, and Julia started to wonder about her old family. She loved her life in the forest, but she missed talking to her mother. One day, Julia decides to go to her old home. Not to stay there, but she just wanted to look at her mother and know she was okay. Julia ran on all fours through the forest, looking for the same diner where she last ate. She had learned to run like that because it was a lot faster. The only thing was that she had to look at the ground. Her neck wasn't built to bend upwards for so long. Because of that, she could never have seen that there was a truck driving toward her on the road. One of the wolves followed Julia without her knowing. She spotted Julia lying on the road and ran towards her. The wolf laid her head on Julia's chest and closed her eyes. In the meantime, the truck driver had called an ambulance, and Julia could hear the sirens coming closer. A tear ran over the wolf's cheek as Julia drew her last breath. The wolf jumped up as the ambulance arrived. It watched from a distance as Julia was put on a stretcher and taken away. She waited and waited until Julia would return, but she didn't. After a few days, the wolf started to search for Julia. She picked up a scent, a very faint scent, but she followed it anyway. The wolf walked all the way to the little village where Julia came from. She smelled Julia, or it seemed like the way Julia smelled. She walked inside a church and saw Julia lying inside a strange big box. The wolf jumped on top of the box and laid her head on Julia as she did on the road. Julia's mother screamed when she saw what was happening. She thought the wolf wanted to eat her daughter. But she soon realized the wolf wasn't aggressive toward Julia. She saw a sad demeanor on the wolf's face. Some people were trying to lure the wolf away by presenting meat in front of it. But nothing worked. The wolf would not leave her side, but why? Julia's mother, Janet, noticed how big the wolf was. It was almost twice the size of a normal wolf. She called a vet to come and look at the wolf from a distance. The vet agreed with Janet. They decided to tranquilize the wolf to look at it more closely. They lifted the wolf off Julia and put it down next to the coffin. The vet couldn't believe what he saw next.